In 1976, a passenger arrived in Paris who had been dead for more than 3,000 years. He was a king of Egypt. And to let him make the trip, his government did something that sounds invented. They issued the corpse a passport, a real modern travel document for a pharaoh who died around 1213 before the Common Era. The occupation line, as it was reported, read simply, King, deceased. This actually happened. And the reason it happened is a better story than the joke it sounds like. Start with the man himself, Ramesses II. Ramesses the Great. He ruled Egypt for about 66 years, one of the longest reigns in all of recorded history. He lived to roughly 90, at a time when most people did not see 40. He outlived several of his own heirs. He had the years to raise a family the size of a village. By the counts that survive, he fathered something like 100 children, sons and daughters by a long line of wives. He reigned so long that son after son grew old, waiting for a throne they never reached. The heir who finally followed him, a man named Merneptah, was already old himself. He built on a scale nobody had matched. The temples at Abu Simbel carved into a cliff face, the Great Hall at Karnak, his own memorial temple, the Ramesseum. A statue of him was so vast that when a fragment reached Europe centuries later, it helped inspire a famous poem about a king named Ozymandias. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. He was not only a builder. As a young king, he marched his army north into Syria against the other great power of the age, the Empire of the Hittites. They met at a city called Kadesh, in one of the largest chariot battles the ancient world ever recorded. Ramesses was ambushed, cut off from his own men, and very nearly killed. He fought his way clear, and then he carved the near disaster onto his temple walls as the greatest victory in history. Years later, he did something rarer than any victory. He and the Hittite king ended their war in writing, in the earliest surviving peace treaty between two nations anywhere in the world. A copy of that treaty hangs today at the headquarters of the United Nations. For 3,000 years, Ramesses was one of the most famous humans who had ever lived, and then his body had a very strange afterlife. When Ramesses died, he was buried in the Valley of the Kings, in a tomb built for a god on earth. He did not stay there. Within a few centuries, tomb robbers had stripped the royal graves, and Egypt's own priests were quietly moving the kings to keep what was left of them safe. They gathered dozens of pharaohs, rewrapped them, and hid them together in a single cliff tomb near a place called Deir el-Bahari. And there the greatest kings of Egypt lay, forgotten, in one shared hiding place, for nearly 3,000 years. Until, in 1881, the hiding place was found. A local family had quietly been selling antiquities from it, and the authorities traced the goods back to the shaft. The family were the Abd el-Rassels, who had stumbled on the tomb years before, and had quietly been living off it, selling a dead king's belongings, a piece at a time. When officials finally climbed down the shaft, the torchlight fell on dozens of royal mummies, crowded together in the dark. Some of the most powerful kings Egypt had ever produced. Inside was a crowd of pharaohs, and among them, labeled by the ancient priests who had reburied him, was Ramesses the Great. He was taken to Cairo, unwrapped and studied. After 3,000 years, the face of one of history's most powerful men could be looked at again. For the next 90 years, Ramesses rested in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, and slowly, quietly, he began to fall apart. By the 1970s, curators noticed the mummy was decaying. Fungus and bacteria were eating into the ancient tissue. A body that had survived 3,000 years was now in danger of being lost in a single generation. And this was not the first time the modern world had rushed to rescue Ramses. A decade earlier, in the 1960s, a new dam on the Nile was about to drown his temple at Abu Simbel. So engineers sawed the whole mountain shrine into more than 1,000 blocks and rebuilt it piece by piece on higher ground. They had saved his temple. Saving the man himself would be harder. Egypt did not have the specialized laboratory the rescue would need. France did. So a plan was made that no one had ever really had to make before. Fly the pharaoh to Paris and try to save him. And here is where the passport comes in, and why it was not a joke. By the 1970s, international law had a firm rule. Anything and anyone leaving one country and entering another had to be documented. That included a national treasure, especially a national treasure. To move Ramesses legally, and to guarantee that France would have to give him back, he needed formal identification. So the Egyptian authorities did the only thing the paperwork allowed. They issued the mummy an official travel document, a passport. It carried his name. It carried a photograph of the mummy's face, and on the line for occupation, it recorded what he had been in life. King, deceased. It is the most bureaucratic sentence ever written about one of the greatest rulers in history, and it was completely serious. In September of 1976, the mummy was flown to Paris. And this is the part where the story and the legends start to blur. So let us be careful. It is widely reported that when the plane landed, Ramesses was met on the tarmac with military honors, the kind a living head of state receives. That detail lives in the newspapers and in the retellings. It is a wonderful image, and it may well be true. But it is a press story, not a line in the scientific record. What the scientific record does tell us is exactly what happened next, and it is remarkable enough on its own. Ramesses was taken to the Musée de l'Homme, and for months, a team of specialists examined him more closely than anyone ever had. They confirmed the enemy. The mummy was infested with fungus, dozens of species of it, feeding on 3,000-year-old flesh and linen. To kill it without destroying the body, they used something the ancient embalmers could never have imagined: radiation. The Pharaoh was placed in a chamber and exposed to gamma rays from cobalt, a dose calculated to sterilize the fungus while leaving the mummy intact. The dose was measured with great care, strong enough to kill the fungus buried in every fold of the wrappings, gentle enough to leave the fragile body beneath unharmed. It worked. The decay was halted. A body 3,000 years old was pulled back from the edge by 1970s physics. But while they had him, the scientists learned things no one had ever known. A forensic specialist studied the mummy's hair, root, and shaft under the microscope. The conclusion surprised everyone. Ramesses the Great had been, in life, a natural redhead. They could see his age in his bones. Severe arthritis, hardened arteries, dental abscesses that must have caused him constant pain. The body of a man who had lived a very long, very hard-worn life. He had been a tall man for his time, with the strong hooked nose the sculptors had cut into every one of his statues. Even his old healed injuries were still there to read, 3,000 years on. The god king on the temple walls, forever young and forever winning, had been, at the end, an old man in real pain, and now they could prove it. In 1977, the treatment complete, Ramesses was flown back to Cairo. The passport had done its job. The document that let him leave had guaranteed he would return, and he did. He rests today in Cairo, better preserved than he'd been in a century, studied down to the color of his hair. And somewhere in the record of the 20th century, there's a passport issued to a man who ruled before the Trojan War, whose occupation was listed as king, deceased. We remember Ramesses for the temples and the statues and the poem about despair. But the strangest proof of how much a civilization can love its dead is not carved in stone. It is stamped on a piece of paper, 3,000 years too late, so that a king could fly home. Hindsight moments, true stories, known or not.